We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph and Meseches Chagigah. This is Chagigah Daf 23a. The Gemara in the previous summit said that when it comes to something that is Kodesh, you're not allowed to carry it at the same time that you're carrying an item that is Tamei Medris. That's only true when it's regarding Kodesh. When it's regarding Truma, you can be more lenient. And the Gemara says the reason for this is because of a Maisa Shahaya. There was an incident like this where the Kodesh became Tamei. The case over here is they were carrying a barrel of Kodesh wine, and the person also was V'nifsika Ritzua Shal Sandalo, and the strap of his sandal it snapped off. Rashi over here says, "V'nifsaka ritzua shal sandalo medras hazav." So the case was a medras hazav. This was something. It was an item that was tread upon by a zav. V'notzla biyado. So he picked up this thing in his hand, this ritzua. When we told chach nafla la'aver hachavis, and then it fell into the airspace of the barrel, and it caused tuma to the kodesh wine. So again, v'nifsaka ritzua shal sandalo v'notzla. He took this ritzua. V'nicha pichavis. He put it on top of the barrel. V'nafla la'aver hachavis. Then it fell into the airspace of the barrel. V'nitzmes, and the wine became tamei. Bios hashah. So at that time, Amru, they said, Hanoses ha-medris, noses ha-truma. Somebody who carries something that's Tamei Medris can carry Truma. Avalo ha-kodesh, but he can't carry Kodesh. Gemara says, if so, Truma navi. They should have made the same gezer by Truma. The same thing that happened by Kodesh could happen by Truma. So the Gemara says, Hamani, Rabbi Chananya ben Akavi, this is authored by the opinion of Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia. Rashi over here says, Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia Damar Kol Mokum Shagazru Chachamim Al Davar Al Maisa Shahaya. Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia has a general rule that anytime the Chachamim make a decree based on a Maisa Shahaya, Lo Gazru El Kedugmas HaMaisa, they only made the decree exactly according to what Maisa happened, according to the incident. Uchaoso Davar, with the exact same scenario. Hilkach Bekodesh Haya Maisa V'Kodesh Gazru. Therefore, since the incident happened with regards to Kodesh and not with regards to Truma, so therefore the decree is only with Kodesh and not for Truma. So that's what the Gemara says. Again, Hamani Rabbi Chananya ben Akavi Damar Lo Asra Biyarden Uvesvina. There was another similar type of thing where they made a gezerah based on a Maisa Shahaya, and he said that the gezerah, that which is prohibited, is only in an identical scenario where it involves the Yarden and where it involves a ship. And the Gemara, and he says Uchemaisa Shahaya, just like the incident that happens. And the Gemara will now say, Maihi, what was this incident? What are we talking about over here with the Yarden and the boat? So the Gemara says, the Tanya, as we learned in a Brayso, Lo Yisa Adam Mechatos Ve'efer Chatos. A person is not allowed to carry the mechatos and the efer chatos. Again, the mechatos is used. It's made together with the efer chatos, the ashes of the para adum, and it's used for the purification process of somebody who's tamei meis. It's very important to keep the mechatos pure. So the halach is a person shouldn't carry the mechatos and the efer chatos v'yavirim biyarden uvesvina. He shouldn't carry them over the yarden in a ship. V'lo yamod b'tzad zev v'yizrakem l'tzad acher. He shouldn't stand on one side of the river, throw it to the other side. V'lo yeshitem al pnei hamayim. He shouldn't swim with it over the water. V'lo yirkav agavi behema, he shouldn't ride on an animal through the water with it. V'lo agabe chaveru, also he shouldn't ride on top of his friend going through the water. The only thing that's permitted is elim kein hayu raglav nogos bekarka. It's only permitted if his feet are actually touching the earth. Any other way that he crosses over the river is going to be a problem. Avol ma'avir agabe hagesher, but it's okay to do this on top of a bridge. Ve'eno choshesh, doesn't have to be concerned. Echad hayarden ve'echad shar hanaharos. And this halach applies not only to the Yarden, it applies to other rivers as well. Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia says, no, lo asra ela biyarden uvesvina. The prohibition is only to carry it across the Yarden, not other rivers, and it only applies if you're carrying it over the Yarden with a ship. It doesn't apply to these other methods of transport. Because the gezer is only according to the incident that occurred. And my Maisa Shaya, what was the incident that occurred? The Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, because Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, Maisa ba'adam echad sheyamavir mechatos ve'efer chatos biyarden. There was an incident where a person was carrying the mechatos and the efer chatos over the Yarden, uvesvina, and it was in a ship. V'nimtza kazayis meis tacha bekarkiyasa shel svina. It turned out that there was a kazayis of a dead body. It was stuck into the bottom or into the floor of the ship. Biyosa shah. So at that time, Amru, they said, Lo yisa adam mechatos ve'efer chatos ve'yavirim biyarden besvina. A person shouldn't carry mechatos and efer chatos and use it and cross the Yarden in a ship with the mechatos and the efer chatos. Gemara says, Iboilu, they had the following question: sandal tamei. So we know over here that, for example, there's a problem. Obviously, if the sandal is tamei, so there's going to be a problem to carry kodesh. Sandal tar mao, but what if the sandal would be tar? In other words, there was a ma'isa shahaya. How far do we carry this gezerah? Chavis pesucha, the original incident happened with an open barrel. Chavis tuma mao, what if it would be a closed barrel? Avar v'nasa mao, and also what happens if the person did end up carrying the kodesh together with something that was tamei medris? Would the kodesh then be considered tamei even if nothing really happened to it? So Rabbi Eila Amar, Rabbi Eila says, Im avar v'nasa tamei, if the person transgressed and carried the items together, then the kodesh will indeed be tamei. Rabbi Zera Amar Avar v'nasa tar. Rabbi Zera says no. If the person transgressed and carried it, it will still be tahor. And we'll take a look at Rashi over here. V'lo yamod b'tzad zeh shel nar. You can't be on one side of the river. El imkein raglav nogos bekarka. The key is, however you're crossing it over the river, your feet have to touch the earth. Because the original incident was in a ship. And a ship, in general, is crossing over the air, meaning it's not touching earth, it's just on the water. The gazra alaviras kulon. So they made a gezer on all kinds of transport of this efer chatos and mechatos, where your feet are not touching the ground. Avol mavir and al gesher, you're allowed to do it on a bridge. Hoel v'raglov no gos bo. Why? Because again, same basic idea. His feet are touching the bottom of the bridge. That's not a problem. Then we said it's only true in the Yarden, according to Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia, not other rivers. You are allowed to do these other ways of transporting, floating it across, like we said. You're allowed to stand on one side and throw it. The only issue is going to be in a sfina, according to Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia. And Rashi continues, Kazayas meis tachav, there was a kazayas of the mace there on the floor of the ship. He ended up creating an ohel over that mace, and it created tumah. We said you can't carry the kodesh together with the item that's tamei medrash, so we know that's true by sandal tamei. Sandal tarmai, what if it would be a pure sandal? Mi gazer sandal tar atu tamei olo. Maybe they should make a gezerah. Do they make a gezerah of a sandal tahar because of a sandal tamei? Chavis psucha vaday gazer olav chavis tuma mai. Of course, if the barrel is open, that's a problem. What if it was a closed barrel? Again, these are the questions. Those are unresolved. The last question about avar v'nasa ends up being a machlokas between Rabbi Ela and Rabbi Zeira. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Kalim hanigmorim betara v'chulu. The Mishnah said that if you have kalim and they were created betara, they were created in purity, still if you're going to use them for kodesh, they need to have an immersion. So the Gemara now says, the gamrinu man, who's the one that created, that finished off these kalim? Ilema de gamrinu chaver. If it was created by a chaver who is reliable, so lamalu tefila, why do you need to immerse the kalim at all? They're probably not tamei. Ela de gamrinu amoritz. So the case must be that the kalim were made and they were finished by an amoritz. So then nigmarin betara karilu, you call that finished betara, can't be an amoritz. The phrasing of the Mishnah was kalim hanigmarin betara. It must be that it was finished by a chaver. So Amar Rava bar Shilo, Amar Rav Masna, Amar Shmuel. Rava bar Shilo says in the name of Rav Masna, in the name of Shmuel, Liolam de garminu chaver. These kalim really were finished by a chaver. And so what's the concern at all? Why do you have to immerse the kalim? Umishum tzinura da amaretz. The issue is that we're afraid of the spit of an amaretz. Maybe some spittle got onto the kli, and that created tuma on the kli. So the Gemara says, "Denaf alemas." But 1 second, at what point in time did this spit get on the kli? Ilema mekame delegamri. If it's before the kli was a finished kli, so halav manu, it's not a kli, and the halacha is that if something is not a kli, it's not mekabel tumah, so there won't be any problem anyway. So ela basar degamri. Obviously, what happened was after the chaver finished the kli, then we're concerned that an amaretz is going to be metame the kli with the spit. But mizar zoyerbu, but that wouldn't make any sense. The chaver is going to be careful with the kli. Once the chaver knows that this kli is mekabel tumah, of course he's going to be careful. And so the Gemara explains, no, we're concerned for the following scenario. Liolam mekame degamre. We're concerned that before the kli was finished, so then the amaretz, the spit of the amaretz, touched the kli, and that's going to make it tameh. But the concern is as follows: V'dilma beidna degamre adayin lachahi. We're afraid that at the time that the chaver finished making the kli, it was still moist. The moisture was still on the kli, so at that moment it became tameh. And there the chaver didn't realize that there was still something that was moist, that was the roke of the amaretz. He was not aware that it was there and that it was still moist, and therefore we have this concern of the tumah from the amaretz, and it's for that reason that you have to immerse it for kodesh. So the Gemara now says, Tevilo in harif shemesh lo. Apparently, the Mishnah is saying you have to immerse this kli, but you don't have to wait for the sunset to use it with kodesh. You don't have to wait for the sun to go down. It's enough just to immerse it. In other words, when we have the concern of a tumah of an amaretz, it's enough just to have tevila. So the Gemara says, for that, masnisin delok Rabbi Eliezer. That seems our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer would require hariv shemesh even for the concern of tumah from the amaretz. That's not because we learned in the Mishnah, shefoferes shechot cholachatos. Let's say you have a tube and you cut it for the purpose, you're going to use this tube for the mechatos. It's going to carry the mechatos, the efer chatos. Again, that's used for the purification of somebody who's tamei meis. So this shfoferes, how do you have to be metahirit? Rabbi Eliezer omer yitvol miyad. Again, whenever they did anything to do with the mechatos, the efer chatos, they had to do it all in purity. impurity. So Rabbi Eliezer says you have to immediately immerse the shvoferes. Rabbi Yoshua Omer yitzma v'yachar kach yitvol. Rabbi Yoshua says no. What you actually do is you actually make it tamei. Rashi says you actually have it touch a sheretz, and then you immerse it. And so the Gemara says a very similar discussion to the one above. V'havinan bo, we asked on this Mishnah the following question: Dechat chaman, who's the one that cut the shvoferes? Who's the one that created it? Ilema dechat chachaver. If it was cut by a chaver, so lama litvila, what's the need for immersion? Of course, it's pure. V'yala dechat chamaretz. Obviously, rather, it was cut by an amaretz. So if it was cut by an amaretz, b'hal lema Rabbi Yoshua yitzma v'yitvol. In this case, Rabbi Yoshua says you have to be metamei it and immerse it. Of course, it's tamei. It was made by an amaretz. What do we need to add any tumah here? Ha-tamei v'koi. It's tamei. It's tamei right now. V'yamar Rabbi Bar Shila Amar Rav Masna Amar Shmuel. And so on that, Rabbi Bar Shila said in the name of Rav Masna, in the name of Shmuel, Liolam dechatz chachaver. The case really is it was cut by a chaver. Umishum tzinura da'amaretz. Same as before. We're concerned of the spit of the amaretz. The nafal emas. When did the spit fall on it? Ilema mekami delechatcha. If it was before it was cut, halav mana, who it's not a kli yet, that wouldn't matter anyway. It's not mekabel tumah yet. V'yala basar dechatcha. Obviously, we're concerned of the spit after he cut it. But mizar zoyer, but again, the same question: isn't the chaver going to be careful? So liola mekami delechatcha. No, really, we are concerned. The spit got on there before he cut it, and dilma beidna dechatcha adayin lachi. But at the moment that he cut it and he turned it into a kli, it was still moist, and therefore there's still a concern of tumah. And so in any case, what emerges over here is the machlokes Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Everybody agrees there's this kind of far-fetched concern of tumah of the Am Haaretz. It was made by a chaver, but there is somewhat of a concern. Rabbi Eliezer says that concern alone is enough, you just immerse. Rabbi Yoshua says, no, you should even add tumas sheretz, and then you should immerse. And so the Gemara now says, B'shalom al Rabbi Yoshua, I understand according to Rabbi Yoshua, meaning that Rabbi Yoshua is going to be able to fit with our Mishnah. Hainu di'iko hakeru l'tzidukin. We understand that there's a heker for the tzidukim. Now you have to understand over here that according to the Tzidukim held that any time you were preparing the Mechatos, it had to be with Harif Shemesh. It wasn't enough to immerse, you also had to wait for the sun to go down. And the Chachamim disagreed with the Tzidukim. They said just immersion is enough. So over here also, by this Shvoferes, you're going to have a heker for the Tzidukim, because all we're going to do is immerse the item. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Metamin Hayu Es HaKohen Hasaref Es HaPar, they used to purposely be Metami the Kohen, who would burn the Parah Aduma, Lahotzi Miliban Shel Tzidukim, to show that the opinion of the Tzidukim was wrong. Shayu Omrim B'Mu'rave Shemesh Haisanas, is because the Tzidukim held you can only prepare the Parah Aduma, the Efer and the Mechatos, you can only prepare it by Mu'rave Shemesh. Again, not enough to immerse, you have to wait for the sun to go down. So therefore, again, the same thing is going to be true over here. We're purposely being metame with a sheretz, and we're immersing, but that's all we're doing. We're not waiting for Harif Shemesh. We're showing that Tzedukim are wrong. Elul Rabbi Eliezer, but according to Rabbi Eliezer, there's no tumas sheretz here. There's only the concern of tumah from Amaretz. According to Rabbi Eliezer, you don't actively make it tameh with tumas sheretz as well. Now, the problem is as follows. Iyamrit b'shlama bi'alma ba'inon harif shemesh. If Rabbi Eliezer held in general tumah of an Amaretz required harif shemesh, so then hainu dika hakeru l'tzedukin. So over here, by the mechatos, we wouldn't require harif shemesh by this shvoferes, by the tube. That would show that the tzedukim are wrong. Elo iyamrit bi'alma lo ba'inon harif shemesh. But if Rabbi Eliezer agrees with our Mishnah by the tumas am haaretz and says you don't need harif shemesh, so my hakeru l'tzedukinika, there would be no heker for the tzedukim. So it is clear that Rabbi Eliezer does not follow our Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer must hold that in general the tumas am haaretz requires harif shemesh, and here by the shvoferes you do not require that. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav says, and we'll take a look at Rashi over here, B'shlomo Rabbi Yoshua hamatzricho l'tamei hainu dika heker l'tziduk. And according to Rabbi Yoshua, who's requiring an additional level of tumah, you're purposely being metami the shvoferes, you have a real heker against the tzidukim. Sharei timu tuma gemura, because the shvoferes contracted full-fledged tuma, hatzricha harif shemesh, the kind of tuma that requires harif shemesh, v'chan yishtam shubat tvulas yom have a heker. And here, you're just doing a tvul yom, you're just immersing without waiting for the sun to go down. And therefore that shows not like the tzedukim. El Rabbi Eliezer sheinu matzricha lo tumazu, but according to Rabbi Eliezer, that the only tumah that exists over here is tumas am haaretz. So yamar b'shlama bi'alma hitzrichu chacham harav shemesh bi'alma b'tvilas kelim hanigmorim b'tara. If in general by tvilas kelim that are completed b'tara, like our Mishnah, if that required harav shemesh udalokam asnisin, meaning against our Mishnah, hainu dehachalo matzrichin loika heker, that would make sense that over here we don't require harav shemesh. We want to have a heker for the tzedukim. But again, if you are going to say that Rabbi Eliezer agreed with our Mishnah that you, in general, you don't require harif shemesh, there's no heker for the tzedukim over here, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Gimel Amud Beis.